everybody, Ian from ianarthurs.com here with another video for you. But please first make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for future videos. Now today's topic is improvisation. This is aimed at people who either are just starting out with improvisation or maybe fairly new to it in general, or if you're maybe stuck in a rut. Maybe you're a little bit experienced, but you just don't have any new ideas and you're not sure how to get out of it. I'm going to kind of give you a simple approach here to a few different things that I notice a lot of people doing wrong when they're starting to improvise. So some basic ideas here that I want you to know about. We're going to be starting everything with just the pentatonic scale. I'm going to work strictly out of the A minor pentatonic scale, which is one of the most common scales that people use to start whenever they're improvising with. It's really easy to play. It sounds great no matter what you hit almost, so it's a really good scale to start with. But I noticed that there are kind of these usual steps that people take that they could do better with that will basically give them a shortcut to maybe sounding more mature than they actually are. So let's get into it. Step one, the thing I notice a lot of people doing is they play from the low E string as their very first note. A lot of people learn the pentatonic scale, and then once they know that, they just start from the low E root note, and they walk up the scale whenever they start to improvise. Now, it's good to learn the scale. You need to do that, obviously. But learn the scale well enough first that you don't have to just walk up the scale. Make sure you can actually start somewhere else. If you start in the middle of the position, it instantly gives you a way more interesting beginning to your solo. The other thing is if you start from your lowest note of that scale position that you just learned, well, you only have one way to go. You can only go higher from there. And if you're doing that, it's not going to be very interesting for the audience. The whole idea of improvising is it shouldn't be too predictable. If it is, it's not interesting. So you need to think of a different way to start that's not going to just sound like you're playing up a scale as an exercise. Instead, start from the middle of the guitar, which allows you room to either go lower or go higher or stay right in the middle. But either way, this gives you somewhere you can actually go. Here's an example of what I'm talking about with number one. It sounds okay, but I'm going to play from the middle of the guitar this time. Let's try that again. So to me, it's way more interesting and allows way more space to move either direction as you please if you start in the middle of the guitar as opposed to from the low note and working your way up. Mistake number two that I see people make a lot, it's so common that people jump around the scale like this, instead of playing sequentially in order as a scale pattern. Now, this isn't the best way to go. We like to hear things in order. And music is a language, just the same way the English language is. There's grammar involved, and there's kind of a certain order of words that occurs that makes sense to us. So when we're speaking, we try to speak with the proper grammar. When we play guitar, we want to do the same thing. We want to play with the proper grammar and go in order to an extent. You can always break these rules later on, but start by going in order, playing the scale, once again, note by note, only 1 or 2 degrees apart typically, so that you can build a good idea that makes sense to you first. So that's going to be number 2. I'm going to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. Here's the way the mistake works. Here's what I usually hear people playing. Once again, jumping around, it doesn't really give your ear a lot to latch onto. There's no melodic concept there. Now, let me try it again. I'm going to always play everything just one scale degree apart from each other. So playing one scale degree apart just once again makes so much more sense to our ears. It's like putting words in the correct order in a sentence when you're having a conversation or reading or writing. It just makes sense to us. So that's number 2. Number 3 is to limit the amount of notes that you're using. Limiting the amount of notes that you're using will help you do a lot of things, but first and foremost, if you're new to improvisation, you need to start to memorize the sound of the notes that you're playing. If you're playing a full pentatonic scale, once again, the pentatonic scale has 5 tones in it to begin with, penta, 5, tonic, tone, 5-tone scale, and we have 12 notes total in our position here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, if you start by playing that whole pattern, you're not going to memorize the notes of that scale right away. I really recommend limiting it down to 4 notes. The pentatonic scale has 5 notes. I'm going to tell you to do 4, and only use the 4 middle notes. This also goes back to step number 1 I talked about, where I said don't start from the low E string root note. Starting in those 4 middle notes is the perfect place to start, gives you a lot of room to work off of as you go. And technically, you can reach the 5th note as well if you want to by bending one of the notes. So there's all 5 tones of your pentatonic scale in the key of A. That's G, A, which is the root note, C, D, and you can bend up to E. So I'm going to play a little example here for you. I'm going to take a solo real quick with only those 4 tones, also bending up to the 5th. It can sound great. You don't need more than 4 notes. 4 notes is enough, well, 5 if you reach up to that bend, but 4 or 5 notes is enough to be able to get a good sounding solo. It's more what you do with the notes that matters. That's the thing that counts. The notes themselves, everybody's working with the same material here. If you have a pentatonic scale and that's all you're using, you have 5 tones. Everybody else is using that same pentatonic scale. What do you do with those 5 notes that makes it different? That's the question. Now, number 4, tying into number 3 here, I noticed that a lot of people don't establish the root note enough. Establishing the root note, what I mean by that is just playing it a lot. Sounds funny, but it's really true. You need to hammer away at that root note so that you memorize the sound of it. I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to hammer away at that root note a ton here. I'm going to use that a whole lot. So hammering away at that root note, once again, just makes you memorize the sound of the root note. Once you have that sound memorized, you can move a degree away, either direction, memorize the sound of those notes, and keep coming back to the root note. Learn how they interact with each other. That's crucial for improvisation. That's something that whether you're just starting or maybe you've been doing it for a while and like I said earlier, you've hit a rut, that can help you get out of that rut. You might not have all the sounds of these notes memorized, and that's going to keep you from getting to the next level. Everybody's using the same notes. Like I said earlier, what do you do with them? That's the thing that counts. This is part of that. You have to learn those notes to be able to use them and manipulate them the way you want to. Now the next step here, number 5, is a pretty crucial element. This is a phrasing element. We want to use space. We want to use more space as much as you possibly can, especially early on. Now, if you use that in conjunction with number 4, once again, establishing that root note, you're really going to get some good ideas quickly and understand that language analogy we used earlier. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Whenever you're speaking this language, you want to hammer away at that root note and use that basically as your punctuation. And then after that punctuation, we always have maybe a little bit of a pause at the end of a sentence, right? So you put a period at the end of the sentence, and then you put a pause at the end of the sentence after that. So pausing after the end of the sentence gives you time and space to think of your next idea. As we said earlier, hopefully you've got these notes memorized now, and you can actually think of your next idea and hear those notes in your head you want to play, and then execute your next idea. So I'm going to try to demonstrate that right now. Just going to put a lot of space in my phrasing, and I'm going to use that root note as my punctuation mark, and then leave space after and start a new idea. So developing that space allows you time to think about where you want to go next, and it also cleanly wraps up your previous idea. So finish one statement, then start another. There are a lot of crucial mistakes I think people make when they're improvising or learning how to improvise. Hopefully this gives you kind of a roadmap to get past those. Like I said earlier, everybody's using the same notes. What do you do with them? That's the thing that matters. And you can't learn how to use more notes until you can master a few notes. So try to learn how to use as few notes as possible, as well as you possibly can, before you move on from that. So that's it for today's lesson. If you have any questions, hit me up. You can find me at ianarthurs.com. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.